The chamber had no windows. That was the first thing Marin Voss noticed when they brought her in, that the most powerful court in the known galaxy had decided it did not need to look outside. She stood in the center of it, alone. The floor was black and polished to a mirror shine, and she could see her own reflection staring up at her from below. Dirty boots, gray cargo jumpsuit with a tear at the left shoulder she had been meaning to patch for 3 weeks. Hair pulled back in the kind of way that says I do not have time for this, which was true, because 3 weeks ago she had been on a freight run between the Veldris moons, and she had not had time for anything since. The ceiling rose so high above her that she could not see where it ended, just dark, curving upward into nothing. Around her, in tiered rows that climbed the walls like stadium seating for the end of the world, sat representatives from 41 species. The Galactic Conclave, the oldest governing body in the Orion Arm, 700 years of treaties and laws and careful, patient order. All of them looking at her. Marin put her hands in her pockets because she did not know what else to do with them. The presiding voice spoke. It was a Vel tall, gray, with 4 arms folded in the particular way Vel folded their arms when they had already made a decision and were performing the courtesy of announcing it. Its translator ran a half-second behind its mouth, which meant every word arrived with a tiny echo, like a statement and its own confirmation. Human designation Marin Voss, cargo operator, 3rd class, registered to the independent freight vessel Hildur's Luck out of Earth-controlled space. That's me, Marin said. A murmur moved through the chamber. Apparently you were not supposed to confirm things. You were supposed to wait. She waited. You stand accused, the presiding voice said, of willful interference with a protected navigational corridor, of unauthorized approach to the Keth sanctuary world, of breach of Conclave Directive 47, subsection 9, which prohibits contact with precontact civilizations, and of the death direct or consequential of one Keth observer, designation Yun Oravel, who perished during the incident you caused. The last one landed differently than the others. Marin had known it was coming. The advocate they had assigned her, a nervous pleth with too many teeth who kept apologizing for things that were not his fault, had walked her through the charges 4 times in the holding cell. She had nodded each time. She had understood each time. But hearing it spoken aloud in this room, in front of all these eyes, with the echo of the translator making it sound twice, made it sit in her chest like a stone she would have to carry for a while. She had not meant to kill anyone. That was the thing about the whole mess. She had not meant to do any of it. 3 weeks ago, the Hildur's Luck had been running behind. This was not unusual. The Hildur's Luck was always running behind because it was a 20-year-old cargo hauler with a navigation system that sometimes forgot what star it was near, and because Marin ran it alone to keep costs down, which meant she was also the mechanic and the cook and the person who had to manually recalibrate the jump drive every time it got confused. She had been in the engine bay, elbow-deep in a coolant line, when the autopilot had put them on a course correction. She had not noticed for 6 hours. By the time she climbed back to the bridge, they were deep inside a navigational corridor she had never heard of, approaching a planet that was not on any of her charts, and the proximity alarm was making a sound she had not heard it make before, a kind of low, sustained tone that she would later learn meant you are somewhere you absolutely should not be. She had tried to turn around. This was where the chain of disasters had begun, because the jump drive mid-recalibration had fired a partial burst, not enough to move the ship, enough to send a shockwave through local space, enough to destabilize the small survey shuttle that had been sitting quietly at the edge of the system, running passive scans. The shuttle had lost power, tumbled, hit the atmosphere of the sanctuary world at the wrong angle. The observer inside had not survived. Marin had spent the next 4 hours transmitting distress calls and rescue coordinates and apologies in every language her communicator could manage. The Conclave Patrol had arrived in 2. They had not been interested in the apologies. How does the accused respond to the charges? Marin looked up at the presiding voice. Then at the tiered rows above her, 700 years of careful, patient order, all of it focused on a woman in a cargo jumpsuit with a tear at the left shoulder. "It was an accident," she said. Another murmur, louder this time. The presiding voice did not change its expression. Vel did not change their expressions. It was one of the things that made them excellent at running courts and terrible at dinner conversation. "The conclave recognizes that intent is a factor in sentencing," it said, "but not in the determination of guilt. The actions occurred. The consequences occurred. The question of intent is relevant only to the weight of the sentence." "Okay," Marin said. "The conclave has deliberated." She had not been present for the deliberation. She had been in the holding cell, listening to her advocate apologize. "The charges are sustained." She had expected that. "The sentence." She had not expected what came next. "Is death." The chamber went quiet, not the polite quiet of people listening, the specific quiet of people who know something significant has just happened and are waiting to see how it lands. Marin stood very still. "Death," she said. "Yes. For an accident. For the consequences of negligence resulting in the death of a protected observer in a protected system, under Directive 47. The Keth people have petitioned for the maximum sentence. The conclave has agreed. The sentence will be carried out in 48 of your standard hours at a facility of conclave designation." Her advocate made a sound somewhere to her left. She did not look at him. She was looking at the presiding voice, and at the rows behind it, and at 41 species arranged in tiers, all watching her with the calm patience of people who have the power to do whatever they want and know it. "Can I make a call?" she asked. The presiding voice tilted its head. This, apparently, was not a question it had heard before. "A communication request." "Yes." "To whom?" Marin looked at it steadily. "Home," she said. There was a procedure for it. There was a procedure for everything in the conclave, forms in triplicate, approval from a subcommittee, verification of the communication endpoint, a 20-minute delay for content review. They gave her 30 minutes in a small room with a communicator and a conclave monitor sitting in the corner who would cut the feed if she said anything considered a security risk, which she had been told included political statements, requests for military action, and what the guidelines called asterisk emotional escalation language, which she had not been given a clear definition of and decided not to worry about. She sat down, she keyed in the frequency. It took 4 minutes to connect. Subspace relay from conclave space back to Earth-adjacent frequencies was not a fast process. When the voice came through, it was her sister. Mayor, what's going on? We've been trying to reach you for." "Hey, Lena." Her voice came out steady. She was a little surprised by that. "I don't have a lot of time. I need you to do something for me." "What happened? Where are you? The registry says the asterisk Hildur's asterisk is." "Lena." A pause. "I'm in conclave custody. I'm okay, I'm not hurt. But I need you to call Mom, and I need you to call Dad, and I need you to tell them." She stopped, started again. "I need you to tell them I said I love them, and I'm sorry about the ship. The Hildur's luck is impounded. I don't think I'll be able to get her back." Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that is a person reassembling themselves. "Marin, what did they do?" It was not a question, the way questions usually are. "It's done," Marin said. "It was a fair trial. I made a mistake and someone died in." "What did they asterisk do?" The monitor in the corner shifted. Emotional escalation language. Marin held up a hand toward the monitor, "Give me a second," and leaned closer to the communicator. "They sentenced me to death, Lena, in 48 hours. I just wanted to say. I'm going to the embassy." "There isn't." "I'm going to the embassy right now. I'm waking up Director Harlan. I'm calling the UN liaison office, and I'm calling Dad's old contact at ESA, and I'm—" "Lena," her voice went very quiet. "They're the Galactic Conclave. They're 700 years old. They have a fleet that makes ours look like bathtub toys. There's nothing." "You told me something once," Lena said. Her voice had gone quiet too, quiet and flat and very certain. "You told me humanity didn't survive 40,000 years of everything trying to kill us by giving up." Marin did not say anything. "I'm going to the embassy," Lena said. "Tell me the case number." Marin told her the case number. The monitor stood up, reached over and ended the call. 48 hours. She lay on the narrow cot in the holding cell and looked at the ceiling and thought about the Hildur's luck sitting impounded in some conclave dock with its navigation system, probably arguing with itself about where it was. She thought about her mother's kitchen on a Sunday, the specific smell of it, coffee and something baking and the radio playing something old. She thought about the Keth observer, Jan Oravel, whose name she had not known until today, who had been doing a job, who had been sitting quietly in a survey shuttle at the edge of a system, not bothering anyone. She thought about that for a long time. Outside the holding cell, the galactic conclave continued its work. Forms filed, procedures followed, committees met. 41 species conducting the business of 700 years of careful, patient order. None of them were thinking about Earth. That was the thing about the conclave. It was very old and very large and very certain of itself. It had seen species rise and fall and fold back into the dark. It had managed wars and plagues and the kind of slow political crises that take a century to resolve. It had never, in 700 years, been surprised by anything. It was not thinking about Earth. It should have been. 47 hours and 12 minutes after the sentence was handed down, something appeared on the long-range sensors of every ship and station within 40 light minutes of the conclave's primary judicial facility. Something large. Something that had not been there before. The sensor operators stared at their readings, ran diagnostics, ran them again, called their supervisors. The supervisors called their supervisors. In 6 minutes, the alert had reached the presiding voice, who was reviewing paperwork for a trade dispute between the Vel and the Tharic Collective, and did not, at first, understand what it was being told. "Say that again," it said. The aide said it again. The presiding voice set down its paperwork. "That is not possible," it said. The aide showed it the sensor readings. The presiding voice looked at the readings for a long time. Then it stood up, which Vel only did when something was serious enough to require their full height. "Get me the full conclave," it said. "Now, every representative, emergency session." It paused. "And someone go to the holding cell," it said. "Do not carry out the sentence." The aide hesitated. "The execution is scheduled." "I am aware of when it is scheduled." The presiding voice's 4 arms unfolded and refolded in a way that did not have a translation, but communicated something close to "I have just understood that I may have made a very significant error. Do not carry it out." Because on the sensors, on every sensor, on every ship, at every station, verified and re-verified and impossible, and there, a planet had appeared. A blue-green planet. Third from its star. Except its star was 40 light-years away, and the planet was here, hanging in local space like it had always been there, like it had not moved at all, like the question of how was a problem for someone else. Like it was waiting. The emergency session convened in 11 minutes. This was, by conclave standards, essentially instantaneous. Normal sessions were scheduled 3 weeks in advance. Subcommittee hearings required a minimum of 5 business days. The last true emergency session had been called 62 years ago, when the Tharic Collective had accidentally fired on a Vel research station, and everyone had needed to be in the same room before someone did something permanent. 11 minutes, every representative. Most of them were still adjusting their translator feeds and finding their seats when the presiding voice began speaking. "We have an anomaly," it said. On the display behind it, a screen large enough to show a star system in real scale, the sensor data played on loop. The empty patch of space. Then the planet. Then the planet again, because it was still there, and sensor arrays don't know how to be subtle about the things they find alarming. The chamber made noise. The presiding voice let it go for 4 seconds, then did not let it go anymore. The object is confirmed as a Class M terrestrial world, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, liquid water surface, consistent in mass and composition with records on file for the human homeworld designation Earth. It paused. Current position, 600,000 kilometers from this station. Stable orbit. No propulsion signature detected. No weapons lock detected. No communication received. More noise, louder. How? Said the Duran representative, who was short and dense and had a habit of cutting to the center of things. It was both their greatest diplomatic asset and the reason they were never invited to social functions. We do not know, the presiding voice said. How does a planet move? We do not know. Planets do not move. This one did. The Duran representative sat back and was quiet, which was the Duran version of being profoundly unsettled. The Vel representative from the science division different from the presiding voice. The conclave had many Vel, the way a very old institution accumulates the species that are good at running very old institutions, raised 2 of its 4 arms. We are running continuous analysis. The planet shows no signs of artificial propulsion, no engine signature, no energy discharge consistent with any known drive system. It stopped, started again. It simply is here. Things don't simply appear, said the Tharic representative. This one did. The Tharic representative turned to look at the display. It stared at the image for a moment. Then it said, very quietly, the Tharic equivalent of a word that does not translate to any other language, but that every species in the galaxy has some version of. In the holding cell, Marin was doing push-ups. She did not know why. 31 hours left and she was doing push-ups on the floor of a conclave detention block, and she had decided this was probably fine. Better than lying on the cot thinking about her mother's kitchen. Her arms burned. She focused on that. The guard came at the 37th push-up. She heard the door and kept going. 38, 39. Voss. 40. She got up. The guard was a Vel, a young one, by the look of it, with the slightly too formal posture of someone new to the job. Its 4 arms were held in a configuration she had not seen before, which, given the limited range of Vel arm configurations, meant it was either very nervous or very confused or both. You need to come with me, it said. Where? The presiding voice wants to speak with you. Marin looked at it. The execution isn't for another. The execution has been suspended, the guard said. It paused. Then it said, with the particular tone of someone conveying information they do not fully believe themselves, something has happened. Something. Yes. What kind of something? The guard's arms shifted again, definitely both nervous and confused. A large kind, it said. They brought her to an observation deck. She had not known the judicial facility had an observation deck. It did not seem like the kind of place that was built for looking out. But there it was, a long gallery with a curved transparent wall, and a view of local space that went from the left edge to the right edge without interruption, and every conclave aide and off-duty guard and facility worker who could find a reason to be there was pressed up against that wall looking out. They parted to let her through. She walked to the glass. She looked out. She stood there for a long time. There are things that the human mind is simply not built to process at the speed they arrive. The brain sees them. The eyes confirm them. The signals travel and the information is received, and somewhere between the receiving and the understanding there is a gap, a white space, where the thing is true but hasn't become real yet. She was in that gap. The planet hung in the dark, blue and green and wrapped in white cloud, the way it always was. The way it had looked in every photograph she had ever seen on classroom walls and screensavers, and the back of her father's workshop door, where he had a print of the asterisk blue marble photograph tacked up next to his tool rack. She knew its coastlines. She knew its lights on the night side, the the way the populated areas glowed amber and white in the dark. She knew the particular brown-green of the Amazon basin and the white of the polar caps and the long blue reach of the Pacific. She knew it the way you know, something you have never had to think about knowing. Home. It was home. It was here. Marin pressed one hand flat against the glass. The glass was cold. The planet was not. Your people did not communicate before arriving, said a voice beside her. She turned. The presiding voice stood at her shoulder. Up close, without the elevation of the court chamber and the distance of the accused's position, it was taller than she had registered. All four arms folded. Its face, gray, smooth, old in the way stone is old, was aimed at the same view she was looking at. I don't think they came to communicate, Marin said. What did they come to do? She looked at the planet, at the lights on the night side, at the clouds moving slow and vast the way they always moved. They came to be seen, she said. The presiding voice was quiet for a moment. We see them. Yeah, Marin said, I know. The conclave's first communication attempt went out 40 minutes after the planet's appearance. Standard first contact protocol. Broadband signal, multi-frequency, 17 known languages plus mathematical base code. The kind of thing the conclave had developed over centuries of meeting new species, calibrated to be received and understood by any technological civilization above a certain threshold. No response. Second attempt. Direct hail, human standard frequencies, audio and visual. The conclave had those on file. Humans had been members of the galactic community for 60 years, junior members, small members, members whose fleet consisted mostly of short-range defense ships and 3 exploration vessels that were the source of some gentle amusement in senior conclave circles. There were protocols for communicating with them. No response. Third attempt. A direct channel to the Earth Liaison Office, whose frequency was registered with the conclave in the same way that a restaurant registers a health inspection, technically required, mostly ignored. No response. The presiding voice received each report in the same way. Arms folding tighter, the way Vel arms fold when the situation is developing in a direction they had not modeled. They are not responding to any hail, the communications officer said. I can see that, the presiding voice said. Should we? No. The communications officer stopped. No what? I haven't made a suggestion. Whatever you were going to suggest, the presiding voice said no. It looked at the display. The planet sat there, quiet, patient, doing nothing at all, which was turning out to be the most alarming thing it could possibly do. Send someone to speak with the human, it said, the one in custody. She's on the observation deck. Then go to the observation deck. The aide found her still at the glass. She had not moved in 40 minutes. The crowd around her had shifted. People came, stared, left, were replaced by others. But she had not moved. Her hand was still flat against the glass. She was very still in the way people are still when they are doing the opposite of nothing, when they are full to the top of something that has no room to move yet. The conclave requests your assistance in establishing communication with. They won't talk to you, Marin said. She did not turn around. We have attempted contact on multiple. I know, she paused. They're waiting. For what? She turned then. She looked at the aide, a young pleth, different from her advocate, this one with the slightly dazed expression of someone whose entire professional context had just changed without warning. For you to come to them, she said. The aide blinked. We cannot travel to, it stopped, reconsidered. The planet is 600,000 kilometers distant. A shuttle transit would take. About 4 hours, Marin said. Yes. You want us to send a shuttle to the human homeworld. To the planet, she said. It's in your space right now. That makes it local. You don't have to travel anywhere. The aide opened its mouth, closed it. Your people moved their planet, it said. Its voice had something in it she had not heard from a pleth before. Something close to awe, except smaller and more fragile, like all had not quite taken its full shape yet and was still deciding how large to be. They moved their planet here. Marin looked back out at the glass. At the lights on the night side. At a city, somewhere in that amber glow, where her sister was probably still on the phone, calling people, waking people up. Her sister who did not give up on things, who had learned that from a woman who had learned it from a mother who had learned it at some point in the long, difficult chain of survival that stretched back 40,000 years. Yes, Marin said. How? She thought about it. Not the physics, she didn't know the physics. No one had explained the physics to her. Probably no one was going to explain the physics for a while. She thought about the question underneath the question. The one the aide was actually asking. Have you ever, she said slowly, had someone you love in danger, and you knew you couldn't fix it, and you just had to do asterisk something because standing still was the one thing you absolutely could not do? The pleth aide was quiet. That, Marin said, that's how. She turned back to the glass. Go tell the presiding voice it needs to get on a shuttle, she said. I'll come with you. They'll want to see me. How do you know? She almost smiled. It was not a large smile. It was the kind of smile that sits at the back of something much larger and more complicated. Because they came all this way, she said. They're going to want to know I'm okay. The shuttle bay was quiet when they left. No ceremony. No guard of honor. Just the presiding voice and 4 aides and Marin Voss in her cargo jumpsuit with the tear at the left shoulder, walking aboard a conclave transport shuttle like it was an ordinary thing. Behind them, in the observation gallery, hundreds of faces from 41 species watched the planet. The planet did not move. It did not hail them. It did not threaten. It hung there in the dark, blue and patient, 600,000 kilometers away, doing nothing except being exactly as large as it was and exactly as present, which was turning out to be sufficient. The shuttle launched. From the observation gallery, someone, no one ever found out who, said something in a language that translated roughly as, they did not send soldiers. And from somewhere nearby, someone else said, they did not need to. The shuttle crossed the dark. The planet waited. The shuttle crossed 600,000 kilometers in 3 hours and 52 minutes. Nobody talked much. Marin sat in the middle row and watched the planet grow in the forward viewport. The presiding voice sat across the aisle, 4 arms folded, and also watched. The aides sat behind them and probably watched each other, because there was a limit to how long anyone could look at something that large coming toward them before it stopped being information and started being something else. The planet grew. It grew the way planets grow when you approach them, which is to say slowly and then all at once. First it was a disk, then it had features, then the features had detail, then the detail had depth. Then you stopped thinking about it as a disk and started thinking about it as a place, which is a different thing entirely, with different weight. There is no debris field, the Vel pilot said. It sounded almost disappointed in the way scientists sound when a phenomenon is real but offers no conventional explanation. No particulate trail, no gravitational wake. Whatever propulsion system was used, it left no evidence. Noted, the presiding voice said. We should note that this is not consistent with any. Noted, the presiding voice said again, in a tone that communicated it had heard the first nodding and did not require a second one. The pilot was quiet. The planet grew. At 200,000 kilometers, they picked up the first transmissions. Not a hail, not a formatted signal aimed at the shuttle, just noise. The ordinary electromagnetic noise of a civilization going about its day. Radio, television, communications traffic, data streams. The translator struggled with it. There was too much all at once. A whole planet's worth of talking happening in every direction. But fragments came through. A news broadcast. The anchor's voice, clipped and urgent. Confirmed by multiple space agencies that Earth is no longer in its standard orbital position around the Sun. NASA, ESA, ISRO, and CNSA are all reporting the same data. We are currently in transit, location confirmed as Conclave Judicial Space, approximately 600,000 kilometers from the detention facility where. An interview. A man's voice, older, slightly hoarse. My daughter is in there and I don't care what it cost. I don't care what they think of us. You don't condemn someone for an accident and expect. Music just for a second. Something with strings, fast, forward-moving. Then the broadcast again. Governments are reporting that the mechanism of transit is classified at this time, with a joint statement from 15 space agencies saying only that the technology has been, quote, in development for some time. No casualties reported from the transit event. Civilians are asked to remain calm. The Prime Minister is expected to address. The presiding voice had stopped looking at the planet. It was looking at the translator output. They moved their entire population, it said. 8 billion people, one of the aides confirmed. Its voice had the quality of a person reading a document they are not sure is real. To make a point. The aide did not say anything. The math was sufficient. They moved 8 billion people across 40 light years, the presiding voice said slowly, to retrieve one cargo worker. Marin was looking out the viewport. Her face was reflected faintly in the glass over the approaching planet, like a double exposure, like she existed in two places at once. Third class, she said. She did not say it loudly. What? Cargo operator, third class, she said. You said it in the verdict. Just making sure we're all working with the same information. The presiding voice looked at her. They moved their planet, it said, for a cargo operator, third class. Yes, Marin said. Silence. Why? She turned from the window. She looked at the presiding voice, at its gray, composed face, at its forearms folded in the configuration she was beginning to understand meant, I am waiting for information I did not know I needed. And she thought about how to answer that. She thought about her sister's voice on the communicator. I'm going to the embassy. No hesitation, no calculation, just the immediate certainty that something had to be done. She thought about her father's voice in the broadcast fragment, the hoarseness of it. He had probably been awake for 3 days. She thought about whatever meeting had been called, somewhere on Earth, in some room she would never see, in front of people whose names she didn't know, where someone had stood up and said, we can do this, and other people had said then, let's do it, and nobody had apparently spent very much time on should we. Because she's one of us, Marin said. The presiding voice waited. That's it, Marin said. There's no bigger reason. She's one of us and you were going to kill her and we don't. She stopped, started again. We don't leave people. You are a small species, the presiding voice said. It was not cruelty, it was fact. 60 years in the community, junior membership, limited fleet presence, the resources required to move a planet. Are apparently things we had, Marin said. You were hiding this capability. We were saving it, she said. Those are different. Another silence, longer. The planet was very close now. She could see the curve of the atmosphere, the thin, bright line of it where the sunlight caught. She could see storms in the southern hemisphere, big, slow spirals of white. There is a question, the presiding voice said, that the full conclave is going to need answered. Marin waited. What else are you hiding? She looked at the planet for a moment. Then she looked at the presiding voice. Saving, she said. They entered orbit. Standard approach, one orbit, the pilot calling out altitudes with the steady professionalism of someone who had trained for a great many scenarios, and found that training was the only thing keeping them from the alternative. From orbit, Earth was everything it always was. Marin had seen it from orbit before. She was a cargo operator. She had launched and landed many times, but she had always seen it from Earth's orbit, from the planet's own space, the moon hanging off to one side and the familiar star patterns behind. Here it was different. The star patterns were wrong. The moon was present. It had come too. Of course it had. It was gravitationally bound. It had no choice. which meant someone had accounted for it, which meant someone had sat down and done the math on moving not just a planet but a planet and its satellite, and managed the gravitational relationship between them for the duration, and Marin decided to stop thinking about the engineering, because it was the kind of thing that, if you looked at it directly, became too large. The conclave station was visible from orbit, a small shape, angular, metallic, hanging in the dark with its running lights on. From up here it looked fragile. Marin thought it probably was. Not because Earth would do anything to it. She did not think Earth would do anything to it. But things look fragile when you are standing next to something much larger, and the conclave station, which she was sure was very impressive by most standards, was standing next to something very much larger than it was used to. "We are receiving a communication request," the pilot said. "Earth origin, standard audio." "Accept it," the presiding voice said. The channel opened. A voice came through, female, mid-range, calm in the specific way of someone who has practiced being calm for this moment and is very committed to the practice. "This is Director Amara Osei of the Earth Conclave Liaison Office, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government." A pause. "We note that the shuttle approaching our position contains our citizen, Marin Voss." "That is correct," the presiding voice said. "We would like her returned." "We are," the presiding voice paused. This was unusual. Vel did not pause mid-sentence often. "We are approaching to discuss the situation." "The situation," the director said, "is that you sentenced our citizen to death for an accident, and we would like her returned." "The conclave verdict is not binding on Earth," the director said. Her voice did not rise. It stayed very level, which was doing a great deal of work. "We recognize conclave jurisdiction in matters involving conclave members. We do not recognize capital sentencing for our citizens for non-criminal negligence. This is not a new position. It is in the charter we signed 60 years ago, subsection 12, paragraph 4. We have always held this position. We simply had not previously had occasion to make it clear in a way that was easy to understand." A pause. "We trust it is clear now," the director said. The presiding voice looked at Marin. Marin looked at her hands. "I'd like to go home," she said, quietly enough that only the presiding voice could hear it. The presiding voice was quiet for a moment. Then it said, into the open channel, "We would like to discuss the terms of the detainee's release, and also the broader question of—" "Director," Marin said, leaning forward toward the communicator. "It's me, I'm okay." A silence on the channel. When the director spoke again, the careful calm had something different in it. Something that was not calm but was being held in the same shape as calm. "Marin Voss, are you unharmed?" "Yes." "Are you being held under duress?" "No, I'm on a shuttle I can see the Sahara from here." Her voice caught on something small. She pushed through it. "I can see the Sahara." "Yes," the director said. "We brought it with us." Marin pressed the back of her hand against her mouth for a second. Just a second. "I know," she said. The negotiation took 6 hours. Marin was not in the room for most of it. They put her in a side cabin on the shuttle with a meal that was not quite right but was trying to be. And she ate most of it and slept for 2 of the 6 hours, which surprised her but probably shouldn't have, because her body had been running on the chemical equivalent of try not to die for 3 weeks, and it had opinions about the availability of sleep. Through the closed door she could hear voices, the presiding voice, the director on the channel, occasionally other voices from the conclave. Occasionally her advocate, who had apparently been invited and who was probably still apologizing for things. She did not try to hear the words were for later. For now she sat in the narrow cabin with her back against the bulkhead and looked through the small porthole at the planet. At home. Here. Impossible and here. She thought about the engineering meeting where someone had said we can do this. She thought about the vote. There must have been a vote, or something like one. 8 billion people don't just move without some kind of consensus. You don't relocate a civilization without at least a conversation. And she tried to imagine that conversation. Try to imagine sitting in that room. Someone standing up and saying we can bring the planet to her. And people saying yes. Not because of who she was. She was nobody. A cargo operator, third class, with a ship she couldn't afford to maintain and a navigation system she'd been meaning to replace for 2 years. She had not done anything remarkable. She had made a mistake, and a person had died because of it, and she would carry that. She would carry it for the rest of her life, however long that turned out to be. But someone had stood up in a meeting and said bring the planet, and people had said yes. Not for her, for the idea of her, for the idea that you do not leave your people, for the idea that it does not matter if they are nobody, it does not matter if they are third class, it does not matter if the resources required are vast and the precedent is enormous and the political complexity is staggering. You don't leave your people. She thought she understood, sitting in the narrow cabin, what the conclave did not yet understand about humanity. What the conclave, 700 years old, 41 species, vast and patient and very certain of itself, had not had occasion to know. They were not a small species. They had been acting small. For 60 years since first contact, they had been quiet and deferential and careful because they were new to all of this, and the galaxy was very large and very old, and it seemed like the right approach. Stand in the corner. Learn the rules. Don't make trouble. But they were not small. They had been on this planet for a very, very long time, and everything had tried to kill them, and they were still here. They had built the atom and split it. They had walked on their moon. They had survived ice ages and plagues and the kind of conflicts that flatten civilizations, and each time they had come back and built something more complicated. They were not small. They had been holding it quietly. The porthole framed the planet. The Sahara was on the far side now. She could see the eastern coast of South America, the green-brown of the interior, the white peaks in the south. She pressed her palm flat against the porthole glass. Cold. The planet was not cold. 6 hours after it began, the cabin door opened. "MARENVOSS," the presiding voice said. She turned. Its arms were in a configuration she had not seen before. All four, slightly open, slightly away from its body. She did not know what it meant. She would learn later that it was the configuration VEL used when conceding something they had not expected to concede. "You are released," it said, "into the custody of the Earth liaison, pending further negotiation regarding the broader legal questions." "Okay," she said. The conclave also. It paused again. Another unusual pause. The conclave extends formal acknowledgement to the government of Earth for the clarity of their communication. Marian stood up. "You can just say it," she said. "Say what?" She picked up her jacket from the bunk. "That you didn't know. That you've been treating us like we were small and you didn't know, and now you do, and it changes things." The presiding voice stood very still. "You can say it," she said. "I won't tell anyone." It looked at her for a long moment. Then something moved through its expression, just a flicker, barely visible, that Marian could not name in any language she knew, but that felt, from where she was standing, like a very old institution updating a very old assumption. "We did not know," it said. "No," Marian agreed. "You didn't." She walked past it, toward the front of the shuttle, toward the planet in the viewport, toward home. "You do now," she said. She came through the airlock into the dock on Earth's orbital station, and her father was there. This was not part of anyone's plan. The dock was supposed to be a controlled environment, liaison staff only, security personnel, Director OSCI and her team. There was a whole protocol for the handover, a checklist of steps, forms that needed to be signed in the right order. Her father was not on any checklist. He was standing at the back of the dock bay in a jacket she recognized, old brown leather, elbows worn through, the one he wore when he drove long distances. And he was holding a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold a long time ago because he had not been drinking it, just holding it. And when he saw her come through the airlock, He put the cup down on the nearest flat surface and crossed the dock in about 6 steps. She was not aware of deciding to move toward him. She was just suddenly moving. It was not a clean reunion. He was too tall and she ran into him at the wrong angle, and there were security personnel in the way who had to step aside fast. And he said her name once and she did not say anything, just held on. And that was all of that for a while. Director OSEI, to her considerable credit, said nothing and signaled her staff to face the other direction. The presiding voice, who had come through the airlock behind MAREN and was technically still present in this space, went very still in the way VEL goes still when they are witnessing something they do not have a cultural category for, and are in the process of building one from the evidence in front of them. It watched. It did not look away. The formal debrief happened 2 hours later in a conference room on the orbital station. MAREN sat on one side of the table. Director OSEI sat next to her. Her father had been given a chair slightly to the left and behind, close enough to be present and far enough to signal that this was official, and he sat in it with the jacket on and his hands folded and said nothing, which was one of the things he was very good at when he chose to deploy it. The presiding voice sat across the table with 2 of its aides. Another VEL from the Conclave Science Division had joined them, and a representative from the KETH people, small, dark, very quiet, who had not spoken yet and seemed to be there primarily to witness. Director OSEI began. "I want to establish the legal position first," she said. She set a document on the table, physical paper. MAREN noticed that. Earth's position has always been that conclave capital jurisdiction does not extend to Earth citizens for non-criminal acts. Negligence resulting in accidental death is a civil matter under Earth law. It is not a capital matter. It has never been a capital matter. The conclave's legal framework, one of the aides started. "Is not our legal framework," the director said. "We are associate members of the conclave. We agreed to participate in conclave arbitration for trade disputes and navigational violations. We did not agree to capital sentencing. The documents are very clear on this. We have always been very clear on this." The conclave did not receive communication to this effect when. "We sent 6 communications," the director said, "in the first 48 hours after the arrest. The records are attached to the document you are looking at." The aide looked at the document. Its expression did something uncomfortable. "We did not," it began. "Receive them? No." The director's voice was even. "We noticed. It was one of the factors that informed our response." Silence. The presiding voice, which had been watching this exchange with its arms in the conceding configuration from the shuttle, said, "The conclave accepts that there was a failure of communication on our part. We are conducting an internal review of the processing of the human communication requests during the trial period." The KETH representative, who had not spoken, made a small sound. Everyone looked at it. It was very small. Its eyes were large and dark, and it had been looking at MAREN since it entered the room. "I was asked to be present," it said. Its translator was very good. The voice that came through had the quality of something that had been shaped carefully for a long time. "By the KETH Governing Council, to speak to the matter of YUNORAVEL." MAREN went still. "I would like to address the human," the KETH representative said. Director OSEI looked at MAREN. MAREN nodded. The KETH representative turned to face her fully. "YUNORAVEL was my colleague. We studied together for 11 years. She was very good at her work." It paused. "The KETH people requested your execution. I want you to know that I did not agree with this request. I am not speaking for the council. I am speaking as YUNORAVEL's colleague." Another pause. "She would not have agreed with it either. She spent her career studying civilizations that were new to contact. She believed." Its voice stopped. Started again. "She believed that accidents were not crimes." The room was very quiet. "I'm sorry," Maren said. The words were not adequate. She knew they were not adequate. She said them anyway. I'm sorry about your colleague. I'm sorry about what happened. I would, she stopped. I would undo it if I could. The Keth representative looked at her for a long moment. Yes, it said, I think you would. It folded its small hands on the table. The council will need to revise its petition. Young Oravel's family the death was real and the grief is real and there must be acknowledgement, but not this. We agree, Director Osai said. We would like to propose a reparations framework for the family, for the Keth people. This should be addressed properly. The Keth representative nodded. That would be acceptable. It looked at Marin once more. Then it looked at the presiding voice. My people petitioned for the maximum sentence, it said, because we were angry and we were grieving and we wanted the largest possible acknowledgement of what we had lost. It paused. We did not expect the response we received. No, the presiding voice said, neither did we. The question of the technology came later. Not in the conference room. Later, when the formal session had concluded and people were standing and gathering papers and the room was thinning out, Director Os asked the presiding voice if she could have a moment. Marin was leaving when the director caught her eye and gave her a small nod that meant you can stay if you want. She stayed. She sat in her chair while the room emptied and her father stood by the door, and Director Osai stood across the table from the presiding voice with her hands clasped behind her back. You want to know about the drive, the director said. The conclave wants to know about the drive, the presiding voice said. We expected that. It is not a small thing to move a planet. No, the director agreed. The energy requirements alone are significant, yes. The presiding voice waited. You're not going to tell me. I'm going to tell you that we have it, Director Osai said. I'm going to tell you that we have had the theoretical framework for some time, and that we have been working on application for the last 12 years, and that this was the first full-scale test. She paused. It worked. Yes, the presiding voice said, we noticed. The details are not something we're prepared to share at this time. That position may change as our relationship with the conclave develops, but at this time. You don't trust us, the presiding voice said. The director tilted her head. We are new members, she said. Junior members, we have been careful. We are still being careful. She looked at the presiding voice levelly. You sentenced one of our citizens to death for an accident and didn't receive 6 of our communications. We would like to see how the next period develops before we discuss the details of our capabilities. The presiding voice was quiet for a long time. That is, it said finally, a reasonable position. We think so. I have a question, the presiding voice said. Not for the record, not for the conclave minutes. Ask it. How many of your people voted, the presiding voice said, to move the planet? The director looked at it. Something moved through her expression that was not quite a smile. All of them, she said. It was not close. The presiding voice absorbed this. 8 billion people, it said. All of them for one person. For the principal, the director said. She just happened to be the one who needed it this time. She just happened to be the one who needed it this time. Marin was walking the corridor of the orbital station 2 hours later, back toward the dock, back toward the transit shuttle that would take her down to the surface, and those words were walking with her. She just happened to be the one. She had been turning it over since she heard it, the way you turn a stone over in your pocket, not to examine it, just to feel the weight of it. She had not done anything to deserve being saved. She had not been brave in her holding cell. She had done push-ups and tried not to think about her mother's kitchen, and made one phone call to her sister, who had then apparently started a chain of events that ended with the planet in the wrong solar system. She had just been the one who needed it. That was the thing she was going to have to live with, not the being saved part. The being saved because of what it said about who they were. 8 billion people looking at the numbers, the energy, the resources, the engineering, the risk, the political cost, and saying yes anyway. Not for her. For the idea that it was not acceptable to leave someone behind. Even someone, nobody. even someone third class. She stopped at a porthole in the corridor. The planet was visible from here, hanging in the unfamiliar dark. The conclave station was visible too, small and angular, its running lights blinking steady in the nothing. Her father fell into step beside her. He had been trailing her since the conference room, close enough to be there, far enough to give her space, which was something he had always been good at. "You know what the worst part is," she said. "What?" "I still have to pay for the asterisk Hildur's luck." She looked at the planet. "She's impounded. The dock fees are probably—" "I'll handle it," her father said. "Dad." "I'll handle it." His voice was the same voice it had always been, low and calm and not interested in being argued with. He looked out the porthole too, at the planet, at the station, at the star patterns that were wrong. "We'll get your ship back." She leaned against the porthole. The glass was cold against her shoulder. "Dad." "Yeah." "When they called you about the vote," she looked at him sideways. "Was it, did you know, about the drive, about what they were going to do?" He was quiet for a moment. "Your mother cried," he said, "when the news came through about the sentence." His voice was very steady, the kind of steady that costs something to maintain. "And then the vote notification came and she read it and she got very quiet and she said—" He stopped. "She said, well, obviously." Marin pressed the back of her hand against her mouth again, just for a second. "Yeah," she said. "Obviously," he said. They stood at the porthole together and looked at the planet and didn't say anything else for a while, which was the right amount to say. The presiding voice filed its report to the full conclave from its office on the judicial station, 3 hours after the conference room meeting ended. It sat with the report on the screen for a long time before it transmitted it. The report covered the legal situation, the communication failure, the proposed reparations framework for the Keth family, the suspension of the sentence, the revised legal memorandum on conclave capital jurisdiction over Earth citizens, all of it necessary, all of it important. At the end of the report, there was a section marked * advisory observations. It had written this section 3 times and deleted it twice. The third version read: "The conclave's assessment of the human species requires significant revision. Current categorization as a junior member species with limited strategic significance does not reflect the full scope of human capability or intent. The transit event demonstrates technological capacity that exceeds any known member species in the area of planetary-scale propulsion. The nature of the vote, unanimous, rapid, in response to a single citizen's situation, suggests a collective behavioral pattern with no direct parallel in conclave experience. Humans do not appear to calculate the cost of their decisions in the same way other species do. They appear to calculate whether the decision is, in their own words, the right thing to do, and then address the cost afterward. This is not inefficiency. It may be the most important thing about them. The conclave is advised to review all prior assessments, all junior membership frameworks, all diplomatic protocols relating to Earth, and to approach future interactions with the understanding that we do not yet fully know what we are dealing with. We should find out." It transmitted the report. Then it sat in the quiet of its office and looked at the sensor feed from the exterior cameras, which still showed the planet, still in orbit, patient and blue and large. It was going to go back. Earth was going to go home. Back 40 light-years to its star when this was done. Everyone understood that. The planet could not stay here indefinitely. Its star was elsewhere. Its moon was borrowed space. 8 billion people had lives and supply chains and growing things that needed the right sun. It was going to go back. But it had come. That was the thing the presiding voice kept returning to, sitting in its office in the quiet. It had come. Not a ship, not a fleet, not a message, not a threat, not a formal diplomatic protest filed in triplicate. A planet. It had come because one person needed it to. The presiding voice had been involved in conclave governance for 51 years. It had seen species conduct wars over territory and resources and insults, both real and imagined. It had seen alliances built and broken and rebuilt in different shapes. It had seen the long, slow work of civilization, the endless negotiating and compromising and cataloging and adjusting that kept 41 species from killing each other most of the time. It had never seen anything like this. It was not sure the galaxy had ever seen anything like this. It filed a second, shorter note to the Conclave's Senior Security Council, marked urgent and confidential. It contained 4 sentences. Earth has capabilities we do not fully understand. They have chosen, so far, to use those capabilities in a way that was not threatening. We do not know if that will always be the case. We should be very careful, going forward, about giving them a reason not to be. It transmitted that too. Then it turned off the sensor feed, because there was only so long a very old institution could look at something it had misjudged and feel entirely comfortable. They gave her back the *Hildur's luck* on a Tuesday. She had not known it was Tuesday until she checked the ship's calendar, which had continued to tick over accurately in the impound dock despite everything, because the Hildur's luck was unreliable about many things, but time was not one of them. The navigation system had opinions about which star it was orbiting, and occasionally forgot the ship was in space and not in a planetary bay, but it had never once gotten the date wrong, and Marin had always thought this said something about priorities. The impound dock was on the Conclave station. She walked through it alone. Her father had gone back to the planet 3 days ago. Her sister had never left it. And there was the Hildur's luck*, sitting between a Vel research vessel and a Theric cargo ship twice its size, looking small and a little battered and exactly like herself. Marin put her hand flat on the hull. The metal was cold, in the way of things that have been sitting still. "Hey," she said, "sorry it took so long." The ship said nothing, because ships don't, but the hull was solid under her palm, and the docking clamps had been released, and all of it was hers again, which was something. She walked the perimeter before boarding. She had always done this, a full circle before boarding, checking the hull, the engine ports, the cargo bay seals. Her first captain had taught her. You walk the outside before you walk the inside. She had done it for 15 years. She would do it for 15 more. The hull was fine. The Conclave had not damaged anything. She had half expected they would, or would claim something was damaged and charge her for it. They were, after all, a bureaucratic institution, and she was, after all, the person who had complicated their week considerably, but there was nothing. Every seal intact. The engine ports clean. The cargo bay empty but undamaged. She came around to the boarding ramp, keyed her code, and went up. The ship smelled like itself. This was not a glamorous smell. It smelled like recycled air and machine oil, and the specific brand of instant noodles she bought in bulk from a supplier at the Veldra station, because it was the cheapest brand, and she had been eating it for so long that it had stopped tasting like anything, and had just become what food smelled like on a ship. She breathed it in. The bridge was unchanged. The navigation system's status light was blinking amber, which meant it was in one of its moods. The pilot's chair had the same crack in the left armrest she had been meaning to tape up. The co-pilot's seat, which nobody ever sat in, had her extra jacket draped over it and a dead plan on the console in front of it that she had genuinely forgotten about. She sat in the pilot's chair. Outside the forward viewport, the Conclave station, the dark, and at the edge of the viewport, visible if she leaned slightly left, the curve of Earth. Still here. 4 days it had been. Earth was staying until the reparations framework was finalized and signed, which Director Osa had said would take another 2 days at most. Then it would go back. The engineers had filed the return trajectory 2 days ago, same process in reverse, same energy expenditure, same careful management of the gravitational bond with the moon, same everything. 8 billion people going home. But not yet. Marin leaned left and looked at the planet. The debrief with Director Osa had been thorough. 3 sessions over 3 days, each one covering a different dimension of what had happened and what it meant. Legal, diplomatic, personal. Marin had answered every question as honestly as she could, which was not difficult because she had not done anything strategic. She had done what was in front of her. She had survived. On the 3rd day, Director Osei had asked her one question that was different from the others. What do you think they understand about us now, that they didn't before? Marin had thought about it for a while. That we mean it, she said. The director had waited for more. When we say we don't leave people, Marin said. They thought it was a slogan, something you put on a banner. Every species has things like that, things you say about yourself that aren't quite true, that are aspirational, that you believe when it's easy and file away when it isn't. She paused. They thought we were like that, junior members, 60 years in, still figuring out how things work. Small fleet, quiet profile, no apparent strategic significance. She looked at her hands. They thought we were saying it. What? And now, the director said. Now they know we mean it every time, Marin said. And they don't know how many other things we mean every time. That's the part that I think, that's the part they'll be thinking about for a while. The director had nodded slowly, made a note. Then she had looked at Marin across the conference table and said, You should know, the vote wasn't unanimous. Marin had looked up. Most people voted yes, an overwhelming majority, but it wasn't unanimous. There were people who said the cost is too high, the risk is too great, we don't know if this is safe, we don't know if the drive will work at this scale, we could lose the planet. She paused. There were people who said it's one person, one cargo operator, we can't risk 8 billion for one. Marin was quiet. They were outvoted, the director said. Significantly, but they weren't wrong to say it, it was a real risk. What made the difference? Marin asked. In the vote, what did people say on the other side? The director looked at her for a moment. A man gave a speech, she said. In the General Assembly session, an old man, he talked about the principle of it, not about you specifically, about what it would mean going forward to live in a galaxy where we had left one of our people behind because the cost was too high, what it would do to us, not politically, to us as people, what it would mean to know that we had done it. She paused. He said, and this got quoted a lot afterward, he said, I'm not worried about what the galaxy thinks of us. I'm worried about what we think of ourselves. Marin looked at the table. And then he said, the director continued, besides, we built the thing. We might as well test it. Marin made a sound. It came out somewhere between a laugh and something that was not a laugh. Who was he? A retired engineer, the director said. He worked on the drive project for 9 years. His name is Voss. Marin went still. He didn't tell you, the director said. Not a question. No, Marin said. He did not tell me. She had sat with that for a long time after the session ended. She had sat with it all the way back to the orbital station and through dinner and through the night. And in the morning she had called her father, who was back on the surface by then, and he had picked up on the second ring. You were on the drive project, she said. A pause. I was on the drive project, he said. For 9 years. Almost 10. And you gave a speech. I gave a speech, he said. It wasn't a very good speech. Your mother told me the ending was too jokey. The ending was perfect, she said. He was quiet on the other end. Then, you would have been fine, you know, you're always fine. Dad. You are. You moved a planet. We moved a planet, he said. Different thing, you weren't involved. She had laughed then. Actually laughed, the real kind, the kind that clears something out, and he had said nothing and let her, and that was the thing about her father. He knew when to talk and when to be present, and when to just let the call go quiet. Come home, he said when she was done. I will, she said, soon. Now she sat in the pilot's chair of the *Hildur's Luck and ran through the pre-launch checklist. Engine status, nominal. Jump drive, recalibrated finally properly. She had spent 4 hours on it the previous day, and for once in its unreliable life it was showing all green. Navigation, amber, which was normal, she would correct for it in transit. Cargo hold, empty. Fuel, full. Life support, full. Comms active. She filed her departure clearance with the conclave station. There was a pause, longer than the usual processing time. Then the clearance came back, marked asterisk approved asterisk, with a note appended to the transmission from the docking authority. The note said, "Safe travels, Marin Voss. The Conclave Docking Authority wishes you an uneventful journey." It was a standard departing note. The Conclave used it for all outbound ships. But someone had added, in smaller text below the standard line, added it manually, not through the form, which meant someone at the docking authority had taken the time to type it separately. Uneventful this time. She looked at the note for a moment. Then she keyed the launch sequence. She brought the asterisk Hildur's luck asterisk out of the dock on thrusters and took a slow arc around the station before setting her heading. Not because she needed to. Because she wanted one more look. The planet hung at 3 o'clock as she came around the far side of the station, full in the viewport, no porthole framing, no glass between her and the view, just the ship's transparent forward panel and the dark and, filling a third of it, Earth. She let the ship drift. She looked. She had been looking at it for days. From the shuttle, from the orbital station, from ports and viewports and portholes, and the direct visual on approach. She had been looking at it for days, and she had not, she realized, actually looked at it yet. Not the way you look at something when you know you're about to leave it. She looked at it now. The Pacific was on this side. The Pacific was enormous. You forget, sometimes, going about your life on the surface, how enormous it was. From orbit it was the dominant feature, the biggest single thing visible, blue-black and vast, with clouds moving slow and distant above it. Asia was at the edge, the brown-green coast of it, the Himalayas visible as a pale ridge along the border of what used to be India. Night side coming around on the left, the amber and white lights of cities. The moon off to the right doing what the moon did, marking time. Marin looked at all of it. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. She had seen it from orbit 100 times, and she had never once not thought it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. And she had always registered that thought, and then gotten on with departure because there were schedules to keep and cargo to deliver, and a navigation system to argue with. Not today. Today she let the ship drift and she looked, and she felt the weight of the thing she was looking at. Not just the planet, the decision. 8 billion people had looked at those numbers, the energy, the resources, the risk, the engineering of the impossible, and said yes. Not quickly, not without fear. Some of them had said no. The debate had been real and the doubts had been real, and the person in the General Assembly who had said asterisk, "I'm worried about what we think of ourselves," had not been speaking to an audience of people who already agreed. He had been speaking to people who were afraid. And they had done it anyway. That was the thing about humans that the Conclave was only beginning to understand, and that Marin was only beginning to understand about herself, that the species was not remarkable because they were never afraid. They were afraid constantly. They had been afraid for 40,000 years, of ice and dark and sickness and each other, and they had survived every single thing they had been afraid of, not because they stopped being afraid, but because they had decided, at some point lost in the back of history, that fear was not a reason to stop. You were afraid, you did the thing anyway. That was it, that was the whole of it. She keyed the thrusters and pointed the asterisk Hildur's luck asterisk toward open space. "Okay," she said to the navigation system. It blinked amber at her. She ignored it. "New heading, Veldris Moons. I've got a cargo run that's about a month overdue." The navigation system thought about this. Then, for the first time in its operational life, it set the heading on the first try. No arguments, no confusion, no amber warning lights. Green across the board. She glanced at the board, looked back at the planet one more time over her shoulder. It was going home in 2 days. She was going to work. Both of these things felt right. The asterisk Hildur's luck ran quiet for the first 3 hours. Marin drank bad coffee and ran system checks, and let the autopilot handle the heading and thought about nothing in particular, which was a luxury she had not had in several weeks. The comms chimed at hour 4. Incoming signal, Earth origin, on the personal frequency she gave to family only. Lena. She accepted the call. Hey, Lena said, you launched. Yeah. You didn't tell anyone you were leaving. I filed the departure clearance. That's not the same as telling people you're leaving. It is literally exactly the same thing, Marin said. Lena made a sound that communicated she disagreed with this philosophically, but was not going to pursue it. You doing okay? Marin looked at the forward viewport. Stars, dark. The planet was behind her now, not visible in the forward view. Yeah, she said, I think so. Where are you going? Veldris Run, I'm late. Marin. Lena's voice had that particular flatness it got when she was about to say something she had been composing for a while. You know you could take some time, before going back to. I know. You went through something serious. I know. You almost, Lena stopped, started again. You know you don't have to just go back to work like nothing happened. Marin thought about it. Here's the thing, she said. I've been sitting still for 3 weeks. I've been in a holding cell and a conference room and a debrief room and an orbital station, and everybody has been very kind, and I have eaten things that were not quite the food I wanted, and I have had a lot of feelings in rooms that were not my ship. She looked around the bridge, at the cracked armrest, at the dead plant, at the amber navigation light that had, for one perfect moment, gone green. I want to go to work. Silence on the other end. I'm a cargo operator, Marin said. That's what I do. That's who I am. And I really, really want to go pick up some cargo. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, the real kind. Okay, she said. Okay, call when you get to Veldris. I will. And Marin. Yeah. Dad's already asking if you need a new navigation system. Marin looked at the amber light. It looked back at her. Tell him I'm good, she said. She cut the channel. The stars moved steadily past the viewport. The asterisk Hildur's luck ran on, quiet and reliable in all the ways that mattered and unreliable in all the ways she had learned to accommodate. The cargo hold was empty. The Veldris moons were 3 days out. She had a delivery to make and a late fee to negotiate, and a very long list of maintenance tasks she had been putting off. Behind her, 40 light minutes away, a planet sat in borrowed dark and waited to go home. In 2 days it would begin the return. The drive would engage. The numbers would run. 8 billion people would feel again the strange and terrible and wonderful sensation of their world doing something no world had ever done. And then they would be back in their own solar system, third from their own star, where they had always been, where they would go on being, a small blue-green planet orbiting quietly, doing nothing that looked remarkable from the outside. Containing, in the way that small blue-green planets sometimes contain, something remarkable on the inside. The conclave was revising its assessments. The galaxy was paying attention. Marin Voss, cargo operator 3rd class, was running the Veldris route behind schedule, and hopping the navigation system stayed green. It did. Mostly.